Hey guys, welcome to Think Aside. Today I want to talk about the CBDC. It's the central bank digital currency. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it in the past, and it kind of continues to be talked about more and more. If any of you have watched anything about the Federal Reserve and the government and how they're trying to get the Federal Reserve to understand cryptocurrencies more and investigate that side of things, and they're also trying to stave inflation and all that good stuff. And so uh, you'll hear that talked about there. Some of the news, I think, covered it. I watched something on CNBC that talked about it. I kind of wanted to see their take on it and if they were going to paint it in a solely good light or if they were going to kind of, voice the negativities of it or the cons of it. And I mean, they did pretty much just stick to the positives, and that's that's typical. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the positives, but I also wanted to talk about the negatives and why the alternative is better. So, the positives of a central bank currency is, of course, just like Bitcoin or any other digital currency, is that it can be transferred near instantaneously. It can be transferred without the middleman of the banks and things like that getting involved. And then, of course, it saves you money because you're paying less. I believe it's like the CNBC thing. I assume this part is accurate. It had said that the GDP is like 0.08%, I believe, of money spent was actually in fees and stuff like that because of what it charges in order to do transactions and process those transactions and things like that. And so, assuming that is accurate, that is one of the upsides to a central bank currency as well, is that it saves some of those fees. It allows for you to transfer to a person with, pretty much free of cost. I would assume that that's up to them. That's up to the Federal Reserve ultimately if they want to charge a tax, right? And this is where it gets into the negatives is that yeah, I'll go back to some of the positives, but the negative of that is, of course, that the Federal Reserve would have the right to at any point instill a tax for any sort of transfer of any sort of amount. So if I wanted to say you wanted to, uh, I don't know, someone's selling lemonade, right? Like, say a kid is just selling lemonade. What are you going to give them? Well, if it's only digital currency, then they're probably going to have a wallet or they're going to have access to their parents' wallet, right? So they give you the address or they tap phones or you scan a QR code, whatever it is that they implement. Maybe it's all of those. And then you send them that $2 or whatever it is for that lemonade that the kid is selling, and now you owe a tax, and so you have to pay. Say you end up having to pay $2.30, right? That's effectively what the Federal Reserve could do with that digital currency. They could literally tax every single transfer of money to anyone else at any time forever. You wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So going back to the pros, though, you look at Bitcoin and some of the things that it has in similarity, or what it could have in similarity, is of course it could have some form of decentralization. It could allow for many computers or multiple computers to run it, which would make it more stable to, allow for fewer hacks and things like that. But I say that as a pro, as if, that's what they end up doing, but that's probably not what they're going to do. It's a central bank, right? So at the end of the day, they will probably just have one big server, excuse me, running all of that, and then, be open for exploits from there. Excuse me. So that's definitely something that could happen is that they, likely just store all in one place. And so that kind of gets rid of that possible pro. But beyond that, I mean, there are some other pros, but the negatives I'll get into in a second is vastly outweigh any sort of positives that could be because those positives that there is are covered through Bitcoin and other, potential future coins without the negatives, the cons that make the CBDC so dangerous. So some of the biggest things that make it so dangerous is one I was talking about, right? The taxes. They can control it. Any sort of transfer of anything, they can immediately say, okay, you owe us, and just automatically deduct that. There's nothing you can do about it. There is no such thing as working for cash, right? I mean, people do that all the time, at least in the smaller counties and things like that. I'm assuming that's pretty nationwide, is where, you work for a small company and they can't afford to hire on an employee, or they don't want to mess with the W-2 or the 1099, whatever it is that they don't want to mess with. And so they say, I'll pay you cash. I'll give you 20 bucks an hour, whatever. Well, that would no longer be possible unless they're going to barter and pay you in chickens or, whatever it ends up being. They're not going to be able to pay you under the table. It just won't be a thing. The Federal Reserve will have that much more control in implementing their laws and their stupid regulations and things like that, allowing for you to really have very even less say in your money and your time and how you use it. So say another scenario, say you it gets so bad where they implement a law for safety, right? Of course, because it's always about safety. It's about your personal safety and the fear that's involved and things like that. But say, some crazy scenario, people are doing something, they're breaking a law or they're breaking multiple laws or whatever, and they implement some sort of law that everyone passes and decides, yeah, that'll, get them to stop. Is that if you become, say, a felon, say you do a class A crime, now all of a sudden all of your money that you had, because again it's all stored digital, say all of that money gets taken just like that. There is no keeping cash under your pillowcase or your bed, or burying it in the backyard, keeping it in a foreign exchange bank or whatever. Like, there's none of that. Like, you can't. So instead you have a digital wallet with your money on it. You break the law, and now all of a sudden the government, or the Federal Reserve specifically, ends up saying, well, we're going to freeze all of your assets, we're going to drain your account, and you have nothing. Now what? You have nothing. Meanwhile, another thing they could have done to make it even worse is they could have easily said, okay, and you can't use your money to buy Bitcoin. You can't use your money, your digital coin, to buy gold. You can't use it to, you know what I mean? And the list goes on. They can restrict where the network goes, versus if you have cash, it's a lot easier to just go to someone and give them that cash, and it's untraceable in the sense of they're not going to know exactly what it was for and things like that. So that's a catch, is that it's now on chain data, being that there's a ledger that keeps track of all your purchases, so they can go back and track every single little thing that you've ever used your money for. There is no hiding it. You'd have to, there's always a way, right? So you could probably swap it for one coin and then swap it to a different one and, get creative. But in general, it's pretty much going to be tracked completely. So that's another downside. So imagine end result where, the law is passed where they can freeze your assets and things like that, take all your money. What if it gets so bad that, society as a whole is like, well, we also need to do it if this, and we also need to do it if that. And what if they do this and we need to have some sort of punishment? We should take this from them. And what if they make a bunch of money? We should automatically, they should be taxed this amount, and it should be distributed between all of us and all these things. And now all of a sudden you're creating a collectivism society, effectively, where people are expecting that they get a piece of everyone's pie. It is implemented as law. And on top of that, if you don't fall in line, if you don't do what they expect you to do, as in the centralized bank or the centralized society, whatever you want to call it, what is set in place, now all of a sudden you're losing everything you have, right? All of your money, all your digital currency, everything is gone because you didn't do what society expects of you. That's a very dangerous thing. So that's just a few of the downsides. There, giving that much more power, it's already bad, especially money wise. So we didn't even talk about inflation. You look at the inflationary aspect of things, and you look at how they print money near infinitely in large amounts, right? And then you have cash and things like that that kind of help boom bust cycle, things like that. You have the banks who loan out that money, and I say loan it out, they loan out money, but then they go and spend it anyway and all that stuff. So you know that's no longer the case. There isn't anything to battle the inflation that the Federal Reserve would end up doing. Instead, you would have constant inflation because I highly doubt they're going to do as Bitcoin and have a fixed amount, right? There's not going to be 20 million, 21 million, 25 million, 20, say 30 million, 28 million. They're not going to have any fixed amount of dollars. I highly doubt it. So what's going to happen is you're going to have, say, 100 digital dollars, right? And all of a sudden, what is 100 of those dollars of the 1 million that exists, just for example, then all of a sudden there's 2 million, right? So they doubled the amount, which is effectively halving the value of your amount. And they can do that forever indefinitely, and there's nothing stopping them. There's nothing that even allows us to necessarily see how many coins there are. So that's a pretty dangerous thing as well when you look at the inflationary side, and how much worse that will get when they think, it'll solve all the problems and whatever else. And I don't think they actually think that, but that's kind of what it's said to be, is it's gonna make things better and all that good stuff. But and I guess the point of this video is to just kind of get you to think aside the idea that the CBDC is a good thing, and just because it's digital, right? And that's the thing, is they're smart to be taking advantage of the timing. Everyone hears crypto and they associate it with a pretty good thing at this point. Like, yeah, it's risky, but they're using that to their advantage as well. They're saying, well, these are risky, these are highly volatile, these are not safe assets. We need to protect you from them. We're going to make our own that you can rely on, that you can trust. You see the ploy there? Don't go with them. Go with us. Come with us. Stay with us. Give us the power. We can take care of you. You know what I mean? Like, let's think aside from those kind of words. Let's think aside from the expectations that we have, that in general public has of the Federal Reserve, and let's consider the authoritarianism that this is going to encourage, that it's going to progress because of it. We don't want to give them all the power. We need to take that power from them, and that's what Bitcoin does. Is it takes the power, it distributes the power. It doesn't give it to one central place. It doesn't centralize it like the central bank currency. It literally says central bank digital currency. That alone should be enough for a lot of you. But thank you for listening. Have a great day.